For the arms and the legs, you will still need your white yarn, but you will need your 4.5mm hook. So what you're going to do is, again, you're going to make a magic circle. And I think by now you know how it's made, so I'm not going to go into it. Yarn over, and you're going to do 8 single crochet into the magic circle. So this is 1, 2, 3, whoops, 4, 5, 6, whoops, 7, and 8. And you're going to pull that through. It's going to be a bit tinier. And you are going to slip stitch into that top, whoops, on a little bit blurry. Slip stitch into the top stitch, go into both stitches and slip stitch. And for this, I'm going to add my stitch marker again into that tiny little stitch there, and the stitch under the chain 1. And for rows 1 through 6, you are going to single crochet in every stitch around, and remember to add your stitch marker and chain 1. So rows 1 through 6, single crochet in every stitch around, and I'll meet you back when you're done. You are done. You are going to chain 1 and stuff a little bit of yarn into your tiny little arm, and then, like you have before, you are going to leave a long tail and get your yarn needle and go in and out of the stitches as you've been doing. And after that, pull through, go around the circle and stitch in to make two more of these, 2 for the legs, 2 for the arms. Now after you've done and you've made your 4 little legs and arms, you're going to start joining everything together. Now you can just pick either one you want, because the legs and the arms are made in the exact same way. You can pick which arms you want and which way or you want them to go. Now for this, you can either sew on your legs and everything, or you can choose to glue it. Now if you're going to glue it, make sure that it is glued on correctly and you have a lot of glue on it, or else if you're giving it for a present for a child, they may pull on it and mess around with it and it might come off easily. So I recommend sewing it on, but if you want to glue it on, then you can, but just make sure it's a lot more glue on it. Now I'm going to show you what it's supposed to look like. The legs are going to go a few inches apart. Now this is the bottom part of it. They're going to go a few inches off to the side like that, and you can either sew them on or glue them on. And I think I'm going to glue mine on, because mine's just going to be sitting, and I'm just going to have it sitting somewhere, so I don't think it'll come undone. But that's what the legs are supposed to be like. And then the arms just go right next to it like that. And then his head goes, I don't know if you can see that. Oh, he lost a leg. But his head goes on top of it like that. And if you've played Undertale, or if you've seen the game, Sans has a pretty big head compared to his body. So I'm going to start gluing mine on, and I'm going to show you throughout it, because I think depending on who you're giving the gift for, or if you want it to make it for yourself with a child, since Undertale is really popular with kids. If you're making it for a child or a toddler, you may want to sew it on, because if you don't glue it on properly, they can pull it off. But I'm going to glue mine on, because I'm just making this for myself. So, but if you are, make sure you leave yarn ends on it. And I'm going to get my glue gun and hook it up. And when it gets hot, I'll be back to show you how to glue on your ends. Alright, now I've snipped off one of my ends, and what I'm going to do, make sure you sit it up properly, and for you to let you see how it looks again, they're going to be sitting not directly in the middle like this, but a bit off to the side. And make sure, well, it looks the same, but put them off to the side so it's a little space in between it, like that. And I'm going to glue on my first leg, so make sure that's sitting up. And when you glue it, be careful. Make sure you glue it in a tiny little circle, and it dries quickly too. Alright, I think that's enough glue. Like that. Whoops. And make sure wherever you stick it, that's how it's going to stay. So make sure you do it correctly. I'm going to press mine down right here. May have put on a bit too much glue. Push it down. That's better. Sorry about that. You have to make sure you don't put too much on like I just did. Don't worry if it shows. I'm going to be covering that up anyway, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. That's one tiny leg, and you're going to get another one, and excuse me, cut your yarn. Sorry, it's stuck to two of these. I'm going to do it again, and don't use a lot of glue like I did. Like that, and the other one goes on the other side like that. I hate the way that looks, but okay. You're going to take your glue and glue a little bit around there, just a little bit this time, and sit it down. Make sure you get it to where you want to glue it, and stick it on your thing. And those are his legs. And that's another problem with the gluing, that you'll be able to, well, when you start, you'll be able to see the glue, but since I don't know how to make tiny little pants for crocheting, we're going to have to individually make stitches around the legs, and then stitches around the torso and the arms, and that will cover up the glue stains. But your arms will go on this way, go on this way, and the other one this way, like that. And after you finish gluing them, I'll meet you back so we can start on the pants and the hoodie. And this is his tiny little plushy body. Now the only thing that I'm going to sew on for this part is the head. But I'm not going to sew on the head yet. I'm going to show you how to make the pants first. Alright, I think I have enough black yarn to do. You're going to take your black yarn. You're going to make a slip knot with your black yarn. I'm going to have a tiny tail because I don't have that much. And you are going to chain 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And what you're going to do, let's make sure that that wraps around the legs, because that's the point. See if that wraps around the legs. Nope, not quite. So let's see. 12, 13, 14. See if that and make sure it wraps around the glue part too. So 14 is good. It wraps around the leg. Make sure it wraps around the other one too. Yes. So you are going to chain 14. And what I mean by individual ones is that we're just going to make a tiny little pattern here that goes on top of the leg. And then after we do that, we're just going to sew it around the leg and it looks like pants. And we're going to add a tiny part in between the legs to make it blue, to make it look more like pants. So after you measure it and see if it wraps around your leg, chain 14, and you are going to single crochet in every stitch across for rows 1 through 5, and hopefully that'll be enough to fill up the leg. And you want a little part of the feet to come out. You don't want it fully over top of the leg. You want it about at the halfway mark here. I am at the end of round 1, but I just wanted to come back and tell you to chain 1 at the end of every row. I stopped at row 4 because if I went to row 5, it would go over top of my part. But it is all up to how you make the legs, because depending on how you made them, if you missed a stitch or not even missed a stitch, sometimes they just come out even bigger because of how you stuff them. And mine fit, and as you see, it looks like a tiny little, when you wrap it around, it looks like a tiny little leg piece. And I stopped on round 4, but if you still have a bit of leg left, stop at round 5 and fit it over the leg to see if it wraps around it. Let me take this out real quick. See if it wraps around it, and if it does, make sure it meets up at the other side, because we're just going to sew these on, and I'm not going to glue it together. These parts you will have to sew on your things. Make sure it fits like that. And what you're going to do is make another one for the opposite leg. And when you are done, I will come back and show you how to do the arm portion, which probably should be the same, because we've made both the legs and the arms the same, but it may not be, and I don't want to go ahead and tell you to do something and then it's wrong. So after you do this, leave a bit of a tail, because you're going to have to sew in your pants around your leg. So that's one. I'm going to make my second one, and be back. Alright, so after you're done, you are going to take the end of one of the parts of your pants, the end yarn, and connect it to your needle so you can, connect it to your needle so you can sew it in. Wrap it around. And what you're going to do is you're going to face it this way. You're going to take either leg that you want to go into, wrap it around that leg, and see if it fits. There was also a tiny part that you make in between his legs that I think I'll show you before I sew on the ends. So let me show you what that tiny part is in the middle for a second. What you're going to do is you are going to take your black yarn again, and this is for the middle portion between his two legs, and you are going to make a slip knot, and you're just going, let's see how many you want the part to stop at least right here, because the first time I made it, the part was all the way up here and it didn't look right. So at least stop right here, from here to about there. That's how long it should be. So let's see, let's chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's see if that's perfect. 5. Now what you're going to do, chain 5, and what you're going to do is single crochet across the entire thing in every stitch. And after that, that should make this tiny little part here. Pull that closed and see if it'll fit. Yes, that's perfect. And once you add the hoodie, that part will cover this part, and then it'll just look like a full thing of pants. So chain 1, pull your yarn through, set that aside, and now we're going to join our tiny pair of pants. So get one of your pair of pants, make sure it's faced the right way, wrap it around your leg, and make sure when you join it in the back that the back part is on the back part of the body, like that. My back part is here, and all you're going to do is, since black is harder to see, you're just going to sew those two parts together. So go into the top stitch on one side, go into the top stitch on one side, go into the top stitch on the other, and sew those two parts together. Wait, no. Sew those two parts together, and this should cover up the the glue part to it. I pull that through, go into the next tiny little stitches, go through one side, go out through the other side, pull that through, go into one side again, out through the other side of stitch. Whoops, come on. I think it's stuck a little bit. Pull through, make sure you're pulling it tighter. And when we add on the things, we're going to stitch in, stitch that tight so that this part, the leg, the pants part, won't come out. But just stitch it to the leg for now. So one stitch there, keeps getting stuck. There, this last stitch here, go through, pull, pull through, pull that, and that tiny little stitch at the end too, and you can tuck that. I'm going to tuck this piece of yarn into it so that won't be able to see it, and just go into that last tiny little stitch there. And pull through. And that is your tiny little pants leg part for it. Now you're going to do the same thing for your other leg, and make sure do not cut off this piece of the yarn. Just cut off your needle and leave that hanging off, because when we add the bottom part of the hoodie, you're going to sew them together a bit. And what I mean is, since it's harder to make a full hoodie and just put it on him, I had to make separate sides. So after we make the pants and we add on the little part in the middle, we're going to make a row just like this, but a bit longer, a row that wraps around the bottom part of his body. And we're going to crochet and have it wrap around the back of him until it stops right here, because you know his jacket is open. And we're going to crochet it up from there, add the parts onto the arms, and then the top part we're going to do the same exact thing and add on there. But since these two parts you can crochet on, and these parts you can't crochet around, we're going to make tiny little, I guess, lapels that are in front of the hat, the front of the arms. And then at the top we're just going to make his tiny little hoodie part, and then we'll add the hat and his eyes and everything. But I want you to add on your other pants leg, and watch, see, it goes directly over top of the glue so that you can't really see it anymore. So I want you to add on your other leg, and then I'll come back and show you how to make the arm part. Right, now once you've stitched on both of your legs, and that's what it's going to look like, you are going to add on that tiny part of the pants. And the only reason we're adding this on, because if I left it like that, you'd still see white with his legs. So if you add this in between it, and once we add the hoodie part is going to go down on top of this. So this entire part looks like a tiny pair of pants. And this part may be a bit harder to see. But what you're going to do is sew around the perimeter of the tiny little stitch and into the pants. So I'm going to see if you can see. go into one of the stitches on the tiny little pattern and then go into the bottom stitch of one of the pants. I don't think you can see it, it's not going in, wait. Tiny bit of the pants, and then pull up and go through, pull through, and you're going to sew on the part around the part of the pants, and make sure it goes in between the legs and not up farther up, because then it won't look right. Make sure you sew around the perimeter of it and try to go into the bottom stitches of the pants to sew it all together. I think it'd be a bit harder to show you, so hopefully you get what I'm saying. Or you can just glue it on, but make sure you have enough glue and that you don't put a lot on it so it won't ooze out of the sides, because we use the pants to take the to cover up the glue, kind of glue stains of it, and you don't want to have more glue stains that you can't cover up. So if it's a bit hard and you're not really getting what I'm saying, just glue it on, if that makes it easier for you. And after I finish sewing this, I'll come back and we will start on the arms. Alright, now for the hoodie part, we are going to add on the arms before we do the individual parts of the hoodie. Now, Sans' hoodie or jacket is a light blue. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your light blue yarn and you are going to chain 14, just as you did with the legs, and make sure it wraps around both arms the way you want it to. If not, chain more. But I chained 14 and it wraps around to my liking. So what you're going to do is you're going to chain 14. And for this, I am going to single crochet for rows 1 through 4 and see if that is enough to cover the arms. And remember, the same thing with the legs. You want a bit of white to peek out of the bottom. You don't want it to fully cover the arms. So you're going to make rows 1 through 4. You're going to do a single crochet in every stitch across, and remember to chain 1 at the very end, and I'll come back and see if that fits. Alright, I've gotten to row 4 and I'm going to see if it fits. One more row. So yes, do 5 rows of 1 single crochet in every stitch. Now after you are done, you're going to leave a long tail and chain 1 and pull your yarn through, and you're going to make a second one just like this for your second arm. And when you are done, I'll meet you back so that we can attach them to the body. Alright, now after you are done, you are going to take one part of the arm, and this is just the tails to your torso and your thing. Now you're going to attach your yarn to the yarn needle. You're going to make sure it's the right way. That's the right way. You're going to take it and wrap it around one of the arms. Make sure it's together and it fits. Now I'm going to put that away, and what you're going to do, the same as what you did with your legs, is sew in Now it's easier to, let me see if you can see it. Now it's easier to see. But sew in your 2 sides. Sew in it in the back. Sew it in the back. Let's see. Pull that through. Make sure your other yarn doesn't get trapped in it like this just did. Come on. Pull that through. See, it keeps getting stuck. But sew it together until you reach the end and leave that yarn on and attach your other arm, and I'll meet you back when you're done. Alright, now what you're going to do is you're going to chain 22 for the lower part of the hoodie. Now what I mean by lower part of the hoodie, don't mind the tails, is we're going to do a tiny little stitch as we've done for the arms and the legs. We're going to do a tiny little pattern and make sure that the chain 22 wraps around his body. Now in the thing, Sans, he has a white shirt on, but since his torso is white, we're just going to leave that as it is and make sure it wraps around a bit to where it's a few spaces, about 4 stitches in between, so that it's easier to it wraps around him correctly. Now after you do that, let's see, leave 3 rows would work with this. So do 3 rows of single crochet. And after we do the 3 rows, at the ends of both ends, we're gonna add gray, because he has gray trimming on his coat, or white, depending on whatever you want to use. But I'm gonna use gray. So do 3 rows of single crochet. So after you've made the bottom part to your hoodie, see, that's what I mean by you're going to make, and that's the bottom part of it. Now we're going to have to make the top part. We're going to make a tiny little space here, because if you make the top part, this part's still going to be white. So we're going to make a tiny top part, tiny little square top part for both sides. And I'm not going to attach my gray yarn just yet, because I want to make all sides and then finally add the gray trim. And I left on all my yarn strings for Sans, so that if I have to sew in another part together, that I have things to go off of. So I'm gonna leave this open. I'm gonna leave this stitch open. I'm not gonna chain 1 and yarn off. I'm gonna leave that stitch open and leave a long yarn tail for the lower part of the hat. Sorry, you can see my shadow. Leave a long tail for that. Let's cut that off and put that together. Put that together to the side. And what we're going to do is make tiny, I call them, it may not be not really a lapel, but tiny little ones for this. And now you're going to need, to make it easier, you're going to need to keep holding it alongside all these tails. Make sure it wraps around perfectly. So where you see about right there is how long you will need to make it, because it's going to be gonna have to make it that big. So I'm going to show you how to do the lapels. Now after you measure it out, and for mine I chained 6. So chain 6, and since it doesn't it's only a few things, do 3 rows of single crochet and see how that turns out. I know I'm talking as if I haven't made this before, but I made sands before, and I'm now seeing things that I could improve or do a bit better, and now that's what I'm doing. So it may seem like I'm not sure of what the stitch is, but I've made him before. It just wasn't to my liking. So now that I've seen what I've done wrong, I can redo it, and I can redo it better. So try, let's see, yes, 4 rows of single crochet, and don't forget to chain 1. So that's my first row. I don't count the chains as a row. That was my first row. I need to do 3 more. After you've done that, that's what it's going to look like, a tiny little square. You're going to chain 1 and leave a bit of a long tail for that. Leave a bit of a long tail, and you're going to make 2 of these. So make 1 more, and when you're done, we will make the top part that is attached to the hood part. So make another one, and I'll meet you back when you're done. Alright, now after you are done, chain 1, and don't cut your don't yarn off. I shouldn't have did that for the other one, but it's fine. Don't yarn off. Pull that out a bit and leave a long tail as well, and cut your yarn, because I remember we're gonna have to add the gray yarn to it, and it's easier just to go back into the stitch than having to keep adding on to it. So after that's done, we made the lapels. Now we're going to make the top part of the hoodie. Now you're going to get your blue yarn again. Sorry, let me put that over there. Gonna get your blue yarn again. You're gonna make a slip knot, chain 24. Alright, after you are done, let's make sure it wraps around his front part of him. Let's see if that works. Yeah, alright. Now what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1, and the next 9 stitches you are going to single crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3, one of both stitches at the top, 4, 5, oh, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now you're going to slip stitch into the 10th stitch. So slip stitch into the 10th stitch. And you are going to chain 12. So 1, 2, 3, and this is the hoodie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, count 3 stitches over and see if that, now let's count the stitches away from it to see if that'll be 9. So count the tiny little stitch at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes. So 4 stitches. Count 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 4. In the 4th stitch, leave 4 stitches in between that and go into the 4th stitch there. I'm going to make sure I said that clear. You have 9 on this side, and you're going to have 9 on the other side. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches that are going to be in between your hoodie. And you're going to go into the 4th stitch and slip stitch. And what you're going to do after that is you're going to chain 1, and you are going to single crochet across 2 times. So this is the first row. So go into the next stitch and do a single crochet all the way across, and you're going to do this for rows 1 and 2. And I will meet you back when you're done. Back around to the other side, and it's going to have a tiny little loop here for the first row. Go into the stitch, the next stitch on your row, and slip stitch. Was that a slip stitch? Yeah. And after that, you're going to chain 1 and single crochet back around. And it's going to have a tiny hole in the middle for his hoodie, but when it's leaning down on his back, you won't be able to tell. So single crochet around again, and I'll meet you back. Because after you single crochet around, you're going to do another row. You're going to finish the stitch, and that will be your hoodie part. Alright, now after you get back to the beginning, the stitch right there, you're going to go into that stitch and do another, you're going to do a slip stitch. After that, you're going to chain 1, and you are just going to single crochet in the last remaining stitches. And there should be 9 stitches that you go into. Let's see. Pull that through. And this last stitch here, I'll go in, and that is your hoodie. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Do this tiny little hoodie thing. Oh, I almost forgot. It's going to be a tiny back part here. Don't worry, once you have the head on, it'll look okay. But there's a tiny back part that we need to make, that we're going to have to sew together with the bottom part and the top part. And that part doesn't need any gray, it's just the middle part of the thing. There's so many yarn ends. But once you are done with that, you're going to leave that stitch, this open. So pull it out a bit. Get a long yarn tail. Cut your yarn. And put that to the side. And now we will make the back part to the hoodie. Alright, now what you're going to do afterwards is chain 7. And I think for this, about, let's see. Alright, I chained, I have I made 14 rows because 8 wasn't enough. So with this pattern, really, it's all up to how you make it. I can show you how to make it, but if it doesn't turn out the way that mine's is, you're gonna have to see if it fits yours. Because if I say chain 8 and you may have added a stitch, or you may have not done it correctly, or you may have done it a different way, then it's going to then it won't fit for yours. So if 14 fits, then leave it like that. Make sure it goes behind it. If 14 fits, then make sure it goes behind it. If it doesn't, add more. If it's too much, add less until it fits the back of Sans. So after you have done your 14 rows, gonna leave a long tail like before, and cut your yarn, pull that through, and now we are going to go back and add the gray border for the hoodie. Alright, let's move this out of the way. Whoops, sorry. Now what you're going to do, might have to split this up into 2 videos because I feel like this is taking a long time to do. But what you're going to do is you're going to add a gray border. You're going to take the bottom part of the hoodie, and you're going to add your gray yarn onto it. Sorry, it's a lot of strands over here. I'm trying to differentiate which one it is. Now take your gray yarn, and what you're going to do, put that down and chain 1, and we're going to tie these 2. I don't cut that. Oh wait, don't tie those yet. Pull that down, and what you're going to do, chain 1, and you're going to single crochet across this tiny little part here. Go into that stitch, and that will be your border. You're going to chain 1 and cut your yarn. My scissors. Chain 1, cut your yarn. Now pull that through. Now that's a gray. And you're going to go to the other side, where you will have to join your yarn. So go into the stitch at the end. Go into the stitch at the end there, that stitch there. Excuse me. And join your gray yarn. Hold that, wrap around, chain 1. What you're going to do, go into the same stitch for this one and do a single crochet. Go into the next stitch. It's only really 3 stitches that you can go into. Go into the last stitch there. Come on. The last stitch there. And do a single crochet. And that is your tiny little border here. So you're going to chain 1, cut your yarn. Now that is the bottom part of your thing. Now what you're going to do, I'm just going to set these all at the front. Now you're going to take your little lapels You're going to take, no, this is the back portion of it. I'm going to line this all up at the front. You're going to take your tiny little lapels and make sure you keep going back onto sands and seeing if it fits onto it. You take this again, you wrap this around. See, it's so many tails, it's so annoying. But you have the gray here, even though it doesn't go that way, and the blue here. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to take off that chain 1, add your gray yarn to one of the lapels, and add your gray yarn. And what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1 and turn, and you are going to single crochet down the side of this for the border. And you're going to do the same exact thing for the other lapel. And chain 1 and yarn off. And I'm going to make my other I'm going to do this for my other lapel, and then after that I'm going to go in and try to see if I can get rid of some of these yarn strings to make it easier for you to see. So I'll be back in a bit, but once you finish your lapel, I'll be back to add on the gray for the hood part. Now what you're going to do with your hoodie part is, since you didn't yarn off and you still have that attached to your hook, you're going to add your gray yarn again. It's a bit tangled up here. You're going to add your gray yarn again to leave a tiny little tail there. Remember to leave tails if you're sewing your things in. And chain 1. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go into the next stitch, and you're going to do a single crochet in every stitch across, including the hoodie, because he has a gray trim for his hoodie. So we're almost to the hoodie here. Go into that part, up, onto that part. Around this. Oh, that may look a bit odd. Let's see, no. What we're going to do when we get to the part that starts, the part that separates the hoodie from that little stitch in the middle, you're going to slip stitch into that stitch. You're going to keep going after that around the hoodie and back down again with the gray yarn, around the hoodie and back down again. And once you are done, I'm going to show you how to attach all of it together. Alright, now after you're done, you're going to chain 1 and cut your yarn. And now we are going to put it all together. We still have the eyes to make, but the body is really important. So I'm going to take, excuse me, I'm going to take my Sans body. I'm dealing with a lot of strings here. I'm going to take his body. Now, the first part that I'm going to attach is the bottom part of his hoodie. Alright, now I was able to take off a few of my ends so it's not as crazy anymore. I took off the ends of my my legs and the one to my head because you have a tail for the head as well, so I won't really be needing that tail. But what you're gonna do for this part is you're gonna put it, make sure your tails are tucked in. In this portion, I recommend you sewing it in, then gluing it in for this portion of it. Make sure you tuck your tails, and what I want you to do is start from this portion of it. And since you can't go in and then go back out, you're going to pull up a tiny loop. I want to make sure you can see. Pull up a tiny loop from underneath the skin, the white portion of it. Go through that stitch and pull through. I have a long tail for this, so just bear with me. And you're going to need a long tail for this, because what I want, excuse me, what I want you to do is sew around this area, and back around here. When you get to the arms, go into the bottom stitch of the arms and back into the top stitch of this area. So you see how I have a stitch from bottom stitch from the arm and a top stitch from this, and you're going to sew those together to make it look a bit more realistic. And you're going to do that alongside the bottom, and back here you're just going to sew it along and do the same thing on the other side. You're going to do it all the way around till you come back here and sew in along that part. And make sure with this, do not go into the gray. Go into the blue. So the gray will have a bit of you can pull it out a bit, because if you sew it in, I mean, you can sew it in, but if you do, the stitches might turn out blue, and you might be able to see it with your gray. So let me see if it does. If it does, I'll just cut it off and just cut it off. Let's see if that works. I think you'll be fine stitching in the blue. I think it'll be fine. Let me do this one more time to make sure it'll look right. Oops, almost knocked my glue gun off the table. Yeah, as long as you pull it a bit tighter and you go in closely to it, it should be fine. So stitch around the entire thing. And you can go as far as to stitch in the pants to the jacket to make, because it's a tiny little space here, to make it a bit closer and a bit more uniform looking. But you're going to stitch around, and when you're done, I will show you how to attach the tiny back part to this. Alright, so after you are done, you are going to add your lapels, and this is what it's going to look like. Don't worry about that, I'll cover that up, and this I'll just tuck in. But you're going to add your lapel now, and I cut off all of my stitches because I'm just going to glue mine on, but that's how it's going to look. And add on your lapels, and if you're sewing it in, go into the bottom portion of the stitches on the arm and sew in to it to make it easier for it to stick together. And you're going to add on both lapels, and after you do that, we'll add on the back part, the square back part to this, and then we'll add on the hoodie. And then after that, we'll do the eyes, the nose, and hopefully the mouth, and then put everything together. Alright, now after you've attached the two lapels, that's what it's going to look like. And yeah, that's what it's going to look like. Now, after that, you're going to turn to the back. Make sure you take these two stitches and get it out of the way. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your tiny little back part that we made for the back, and you are going to either sew it on or glue it on to the back. And I'm going to glue mine on, but sew it on or glue it on for the back. I forgot to mention that after you finish with your hoodie part, make sure to do a single crochet on the border of that tiny at the end part too. As I did here, you're going to do the same thing over here. So chain one. After that, after you finish chain one, and pull your yarn out. And make sure you leave a long tail, but I'm going to go on this side and add my yarn because I didn't tie this. Add my yarn to it and single crochet alongside this. Only two will fit on this part. And after you do that, we can add that to the body, and we'll almost be done with sands. Now, after you are done with that portion of it, you're going to go back to the front part of this, and I'm going to, it's so messy, I hate this. You're going to add on your hoodie to this. Now, you can either glue or sew. In this portion, I'm going to glue mine on, but it's however you want to, for it to turn out to be. And see, that's kind of how, it's kind of a chubby little thing right now. Put it up some, the legs out. It's a chubby little thing, I think. So, now you are going to attach the hoodie portion of the things, and I'm just going to tuck those in when I glue mine on. But after you sew in or glue in your part, I will come back and show you how to attach the head. So just attach it around like you have been doing with the other parts of the body. Alrighty, now after you have added your hoodie to it, you are going to attach your head. Now, since my head has a really long tail, I also recommend sewing this onto your neck. So you're going to sew this on, since it's a really big head. Make sure your line, the back part of it, is on the back part, and that's what it's going to look like after you finish. It has a really big head, I'm sorry about that. But make sure it's facing the correct way, and you're going to take the needle and go into the middle stitch here. Come on. The middle stitch, if I can get into it. No, that's a bit weak, let's see. Well, that stitch there, yeah. Go into the middle stitch there and pull, because your yarn's going to start to get, especially with a longer thing, your yarn is going to start to get a bit tangled up. As you can see, I hate when it does this. Come on, let's get it together. Let's just pull this part. Now after you have pulled, let me move this out to make it look a little bit more uniform. See, that's the only thing. Let me pull this out a bit so you can see, but the only thing that's connecting these two is this tiny string. Now make sure that the end part is in the back. And what you're going to do, once that is connected, you're going to go into a stitch. Make sure you can see it. Go into a stitch underneath the neck. Don't go into one lower than that. Go into a stitch under the neck. Make sure it's in the position that you want it to be. Go into the stitch under the neck and then go into a stitch in the top of the neck. And pull through your yarn. And you're going to do that around the entire head, making sure, well, it's a bit self-explanatory after a while how you're supposed to stitch it in. But stitch around until your entire head is added on to it. Alright, now for this part of the thing or pattern, we're going to do the nose. And the nose is really, really quick. It doesn't take that long to do. You're going to need your 4.5 millimeter hook, and you are going to make a slip knot. And you are going to chain 3. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And what you're going to do is single crochet across. It's only 2 stitches. So that's 1. But you're not going to go into, wait, let's see if that works. No, that doesn't. So you're not going to go into the last stitch when you do it. So I'm going to chain 3, single crochet in the first stitch, and then leave it like that. And it kind of gives it a triangle, well, despite that little hole there, kind of gives you a triangular look to it. So you're going to chain 1, and if you're going to sew it in, then leave a long tail, but I'm going to glue mine on. So I'm just going to cut a tiny little tail there and pull through. Now that is your nose, and we're going to get to the eyes now. For the eyes, you will still need your 4.5 millimeter hook. Let me get my stitch here. Now for the eyes, you're going to make 2 of them. Obviously, you're going to make 2 of them. You're going to do a magic circle with your blue or black yarn, whatever one you choose to use. And you are going to do 12 double crochet into the magic circle. So that's 1. Remember, you pull through 1, pull through 2, pull through 2 again. That's 2, 3, and you're going to put 12 double crochet into the magic circle. Now after you have done your 12 double crochet, going to pull that through. You're going to slip stitch into the top stitch, slip stitch into the top stitch there, go into it, slip stitch, and you're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and you are going to single crochet in the next 4 stitches. So that's 1, go into the next stitch, that's 2, go into the next stitch, that's 3, and the 4th stitch, that is 4. And when you go into the 5th stitch, you are going to do, in the 5th stitch, you are going to slip stitch. And that kind of gives the eye an oval shape to it. And you are going to chain 1, you're going to glue it, long tail if you're not, short tail so you can tuck it behind, and you are going to make 2 of these. Now after you make 2 of your eyes, you're going to make the pupils. And now for the pupils, you will need your 3mm hook. It's really tiny. And you're going to need your white yarn. Now the pupils doesn't take that long to do either because they're really tiny. So what you're going to do is, again, as we have been doing this entire pattern, a magic circle. And you are going to make a magic circle, take your 3mm hook with your white yarn, and make sure to do this slowly because since it's a tinier needle, you might mess up the yarn. Now you're going to single crochet into the magic circle 5 times. That's 1. This is 2. This is 3. 4. And 5. And since we need to attach the pupil to the eye, if you're sewing again, go into the top stitch and slip stitch. If you're sewing again, you're going to need a long tail. But if you're going to glue it like I am, then you can just cut off your yarn and yarn off and just leave it. And that's what it's going to look like. It's a bit bigger than his eyes. That's what it's going to look like. And it just looks like a eye for now, but when you add the nose, you'll be able to tell what he is or what he looks like. And if this is too big for you, all you can simply do is go in. Oh, that looked bad. Let's try that again. Go in. Let's use a different needle. And pull that through. And go in another part behind the stitch. And pull through. And I don't think that makes much of an eye. But if it's too big for you, you can alter it if you like. Because since it's a little plushy, or move it tinier a bit farther in because sometimes his eyes are to the side. But you're going to make 2 eyes and 2 pupils, and when you're done, I'm going to come back and show you how to join it all together. Okay, now after you are done, and I'm getting my glue gun hot, you are going to sew on your pupils in the inside and make sure your eye is in the correct way. You're going to sew your eyes on into it. Make sure you use the white yarn so that your it won't overlap and you can see the stitching. Glued my first eye, and in some pictures his eyes are pointing in a different direction. So what I'm going to do, if I can find my other eye, that's on his head. Like I said, if you're sewing it in, use longer tails, but if you're not, snip the yarn, take that, and take that off, move the yarn there. Now you're going to take your, and with the glue gun, like I said before, be very careful, because it really hurts when you burn yourself. I want to make sure you know what it's supposed to look like. So for his eyes, they're going to go like this. Now for some people you can put it in the middle. I'm choosing to put mine on the side like this. In the game, his eyes aren't pointed that way. But I like the way it looks. I think it looks a bit better. So I'm going to place mine on the tiny side here. And now we place them on his head. Make sure you place them in the correct way. I'm going to place mine about here. So get my glue. Make sure you don't do it too close to the edge, because mine, in this particular project, mine keeps slipping off the side. Like that's about to do. Please don't. Like this is about to do. See, it's starting to slip off the side. Make sure you, when you do it, put it on. Make sure you put it on right. That's perfect right there. And get, see, my thing starts to stick. Make sure you get it on, glued on, and I'm going to get my other one. I'm going to get this and glue this on. Remember to watch your fingers when you're using the glue gun. See how it's steaming a bit? Make sure when you get it, put it on, or it will start to eke off the sides. Make sure I do this right before it leaks off the other side of it. I want the eye to go about right there. Ah, ow, hot, jeez. Gosh, that's hot. But as you can see, this and now you're going to add your nose. If I can find the nose, here it is, right here. Since the nose doesn't take that much, I'm going to add it on, and that's what it's going to look like. If you can see it. Let me back this up so you can see it a bit more. The nose is going to go on like this. And after you add the nose, you can, it'll be the end. He looks like a little, this beard, but okay. I'm going to use my glue, cut off these pieces here. Add a tiny bit of glue onto the triangle. And stick it on to the nose, about right there. And push it in under it, the little yarn ends there. So this is the final product. This is our sands. And I just used a tiny bit of strand of yarn for the little creases in his face, because he has a bit of a gaunt look to him. But this is Sands from Undertale, and I thank you for visiting my channel, and I'll see you soon. Bye.